Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We'll just give people one more minute to get in. All right, good evening, everybody. My name is Kevin McGowan. I'm the superintendent of schools here at Brighton, and very glad to be welcoming you to this virtual town hall, the first of the school year as we finally have kicked off here in September 2020 in a very different fashion than anybody would have expected certainly a year ago. And we're really excited to have kids back in the building, excited to have staff back in the building. And it was great to greet your kids. And whether it was online or in person, we're really glad to start the school year. So thanks very much. Thanks for your partnership. Thanks for everything that you did as families to get things going and to really get us off to a very good start. I know there's lots of questions, lots of feedback. Hopefully some of these things have been ironed out as this exchange started about 10 days ago. And, I recognize that there are several comments that may have aged out at this point. But I'll go through as many of those as we can and look through the questions first. And then we're going to go through about the top 20 or so comments. I'll comment on those and the bottom 20 comments or so, because I want to make sure that we recognize every comment that's entered in exchange. And there's one in about the use of thought exchange. I want to point this out. Every comment, every thought that is shared in these exchanges is reviewed, is thought through, is shared. And that report goes back out. Sometimes when we speak to them in this format, in the town hall type of format, we focus on the first 10 or the first 20, but it's important to make sure that just because they weren't ranked as high by everybody participating in the exchange doesn't mean that that person's thought is not valuable to consider or feedback that we need. So even if it's not feedback that everybody agrees with, it's still feedback and it's valuable to us. So every single thought is looked at. And every question, unless it was phrased rhetorically, is also answered in the exchanges too. So if you go back in and you look at the thoughts that are specific questions, which I'll search on them in a minute and show you how to do that when you get the report, you can look at the specific answers to the questions that you have asked as well. So every single one of these is used. And I will tell you, with 80 some people offering thoughts, 135 other people then rating thoughts, 232 people altogether participating, but the sharing of 200 thoughts, there's simply no other vehicle to get this much feedback in this type of way, and the ability for us to take those, share them, ask questions about them organizationally. Our administrators could attest to the number of times I take a clipping off the screen, send it to them, help me understand this better, why do we do this, or what's happening here, or should we be reminding people about this, that, or the next thing. And so it's, again, a very valuable way for us to get that kind of feedback. There's no other platform where we would get 200 comments in a format like this and help us really dig into what people are thinking. So we definitely appreciate you participating in that and continuing to work through that with us. So let me walk through, first of all, your questions, as I had promised. So questions first, then items from the top of the exchange, and then items from the end of the exchange as well. So specifically, we have here on the screen, we thought all teachers at BHS were using Schoology to post upcoming assignments. My kids have due dates in many places. What happened to the promised standard across classes? Please make this happen. We will, and we are, and this should be happening. So this was one that was a good example for us. It was a reminder we needed to send to staff. And so we certainly will make sure that that word is out there and keep working on that, because you're correct. That is what should be happening. There's a bunch of questions about that. I won't repeat each one of them. The next one here, somebody says they're deeply disappointed in the first Wednesday face-to-face hybrid experience. I thought we had moved beyond crisis education in the spring. Is there a disconnect between what parents were told about Wednesdays and what teachers were told? Very little instruction for both TCMS, BHS, and very short Zooms. That was not the case for everybody. So in this particular person's situation, it must have been. We will continue to emphasize the expectations. It should be very different. Many kids and families actually expressed the opposite. And it was a back-to-back day of Zooms, fully utilized Zooms as well. And so that experience seems to have been different for you in particular. I would encourage you to certainly contact the teacher and the principal if you'd like to talk about that further, an assistant principal. But I will tell you, we will continue to emphasize this because it was a back-to-back rigorous day for many. I observed it firsthand, as a matter of fact. What will it take to get all teachers to adopt what is repeatedly being asked for standardized, streamlined location for all learning materials? Who's in charge of making it happen? Do you know who's not following through? Listen, today's the 15th, second day of in-person instruction for the M through Z group. We're continuing to work through this. We are very, very early on in this process. We appreciate everybody's patience with it. I will thank this person in advance for being patient as we work through that. This is what is going to happen and what is intended right now, and we continue to work through the bumps. And so thank you again for being patient as we do that. What's the point of Wednesdays? If teachers are not using the face-to-face time to teach, they are. It's not a third day of independent learning. It should be synchronous instruction. If that's not happening in your case, please let us know. But this must perhaps have been before the first time that this was offered in an older comment, because today people experience that firsthand. How long should we expect teachers to instruct students on Zoom Wednesdays? We were told this was a face-to-face teaching day, but this person's noticed disparity. Some leave 20 minutes before the end of the period. I will tell you again, this varied. The way we've expressed this as staff is we expect this to be impactful time, well-used time, and substantially used time. Does that mean every minute of the scheduled time will be a Zoom? No. In fact, I don't know that that would be healthy for kids to be on Zoom for 6 straight hours. And so we're asking for that to be reasonable, highly impactful. Some weeks for some teachers, that may be every minute of that Zoom because they need that particular time. Other weeks that might be shorter because they then have the kids working independently on something. That's no different than the in-class experience, by the way. Our staff members are not in class, in most cases, lecturing for an entire class period. They're often having the kids do different type of work. So I would guess as this progresses, I would promise as this progresses, it will be used differently every week. Could teachers all post Zoom information and links in a prescribed location in Schoology? Yes, and we will remind. That should be happening and that will be happening. Can there be an online repository for documents and information? The schedule is sent via email, but then there are updates, another email is sent. Everybody's schedule should be accessed through the portal, and those are live documents. That is the repository for those documents. And otherwise, at the elementary level, it should be Seesaw, and at the secondary level, Schoology. Half days off for parent-teacher conferences or professional development on Friday doesn't make sense with our new schedule because class time is limited. We don't disagree. We're going to take a look actually at the calendar. We haven't made decisions yet, but think about how to look at that differently so that we don't lose that class time as we get into November and December. The Mondays in particular, though, have been scheduled as particular days off relative to holidays, and those will not be changing. My 6th graders under the false impression that all his assignments are on Schoology. They definitely aren't. They will be, again, on Schoology. That is the standard, and that's what we will be using. This next comment is similar and related. So many emails, hard to keep them all straight. Why aren't all class-specific messages in Schoology? They will be, and so again, not sure why exactly that's happening that way, but we're working on a communication plan to help with that as well. Why are remote kids getting more face-to-face instruction than the hybrid kids? Shouldn't the face-to-face instruction be equitable for all students? Hybrid makes up 79% of the students, and we took the leap to trust the district with sending our kids in. It almost feels as if they're being penalized for it. I'm not sure how to express it other than that is how the schedule works, that the 4 out of 6 is because they are able to be instructed that way at home, and we can only have so many kids here at once, which is why their face-to-face is less here in the hybrid format. Barrage of emails, sometimes 6+ a day, overwhelming, confusing for parents, especially those with kids in multiple schools. We don't disagree. So this is something that we're working on right now. We actually had quite a lengthy meeting this morning to talk about that and look at more efficient ways to communicate with you so you're not getting so many emails. I'm on the receiving end of those too. I get it. And we're really looking at a couple of different formats. One is to make sure that the emails you're getting from every building are happening on Fridays. Perhaps, and I haven't spoken with them yet, emails from PTSA would then happen on Thursdays. And emails from your teachers would happen over the weekend and into Monday in preparation for the week. But they would really try and keep those, other than an emergency situation, from happening all the time. We realize that many people are getting multiple emails 5 days a week, and that does become overwhelming. So we're working on that. What's the plan for lunch and free periods as the weather gets worse? Crowded cafeteria of unmasked kids eating is a recipe for COVID spread. We don't disagree. We will continue to maintain social distance. We're just continuing to find space in the building so that kids can maintain that social distance while being indoors as the weather changes. What's the outcome of the Wednesday Zoom sessions? I spoke to this already. There was quite a bit of teaching that was happening today, and it is instruction. It should be face-to-face instruction. That's the expectation. What are you doing to facilitate BHS students getting outside at lunch? Many students trying to exit the building same time. Well, we've adjusted that particular process so that we are getting kids out the door faster and they're not congregating in places that could be unsafe, etc. Again, I would just say to you, all of these questions are answered if you simply go in when the report is sent out, which will be in the district e-news at the end of this week, not before Friday, at the end of this week. And if you go into the search bar at the top of all the thoughts shared, and you just simply type in something you're looking for, and in this case, I just used a question mark, and that way everybody's questions come up. You can see all the questions specifically and the way that they were answered and the information that's being shared out from each of those. So now just let me go back to the comments themselves and start with the top ones, and then we'll go to the end of the exchange and see those. Again, those being very valuable too. This person commenting, can we please have synchronous, asynchronous schedules for all classes clearly indicated in Schoology? And yes, that is what we are pushing on again. My child spoke with an adult last week who was not wearing a mask. He sat at a table, the mask was on the table, did not put it on while speaking. It's important for all adults to set an example for students. Scare them when they see adults following the rules. Could not agree more, you're spot on. We'll remind staff this is the standard and should be happening. So thank you for letting us know that, and we will follow up. All information assignments, all in one platform, all the time, that's simple. We ask for standards, process to be put in place. For teachers to follow back in the spring and told the fall would be different. So far it's not. Well, it will be, and it is, and we continue to work on that. And so please let us know if that's not happening. You should see that consistency. That is our intent. We thought all teachers at BHS were using Schoology. Same thing. They should be, and they will, and we'll continue to remind people. And if that persists, please let us know. That should be changed, and that's our responsibility. Next one, same thing around all links being posted in Schoology. This person, as I had mentioned already, this was one of the first questions I spoke to around the face-to-face instruction. The experience was very different for different people. Some was very, very valuable and a back-to-back day, so we're certainly getting that feedback as well from people. Please make a rule that all assignments should be posted in Schoology. Should not have to look in several different places. Yes, as I've mentioned several times, that's what we are doing and will be doing. Sending emails, letterhead subject line is not helping anyone to know what is in the email. You are correct. And again, that's another change that we're making so that a teacher's name, the content area, and the grade level is in the subject line of emails so that we can make sure we're real clear on that too. Given what is now known about how COVID spreads through the air and not on surfaces, I would like to see much less emphasis on surface cleaning and much more emphasis on avoiding unmasked indoor time. I remain very concerned about lunch, as eating indoors is one of the most unsafe activities. So what I can tell you is we're going to stay focused on each of those safety items, but the reality is the unmasked time is limited almost entirely to that time while eating, which there's no other way to, of course, for people to eat without removing the mask, but they will have social distance during that period of time. And that has been very, very important to us and will remain very important as well. But we are not going to be changing cleaning procedures either. We want to make sure that we aren't among the first cases to be spread by contact, certainly locally. What will it take to get all teachers to adopt what is repeatedly being asked? Standardized, streamlined location for learning materials. This is, I mentioned this before, that's what we are working towards and we will continue to work towards. And finally, what is the point of Wednesdays if teachers are not using face-to-face time to teach? Well, they are, and they will be. It won't be a third day of independent learning. I know I commented on that as well. So let me go to the end. And so to the fifth page has just one comment on it. And it is about starting fall sports now. Sports offer discipline, structure, physical outlet. We can't start them now. They're not allowed to be started now by the state of New York. We also have a capacity issue and our own ability to support that in a safe way, which is why we're starting on September 29th, the day after Yom Kippur, will be our first day of athletics. And so we've managed to find a way to do that with varsity starting a week later for JV and hoping for modified participation in a mini spring season based on availability of teams to play when that time comes. And again, our requirements for cleaning, our requirements for transportation, all of the things we need to do in addition to the way the organization can react in terms of health office, nursing staff, everything that is required to offer a safe athletic program burdens on the other side our ability to offer a safe instructional program for the rest of the day. And so we've had to look at the whole picture. We found a way to do that. We're very glad about that. That will start, as I said, on the 29th. Again, working from the bottom up, we'll go through this page of comments, and then we're going to move into the chat. And first, a question answer just for everybody who's on the Zoom might have an opportunity to speak up. We'll look at the chat, and we'll also look at Facebook comments as well. What percentage of children that normally go to Brighton are going this year? And what percentage that normally goes opted to do private schools or true homeschooling? 1% of our students left approximately for private school or for homeschooling. But overall, there were, including kindergarten students, so existing students, it's 1%, but incoming kindergarten students that chose to do something else were a total of 153 less than our projected enrollment K through 12. So I wouldn't say all 113 of the kids who we didn't have come to us were kindergarten either, probably about 60 to 70 of those. And then we just had lower enrollment based on the projection would make up the rest of that difference. Again, that's across the 3,500 student district. I would prefer some free reign on at-home days. I'm not excited about any Zoom or other work. So again, we see an opposite perspective of what was shared at the beginning. I hope teachers offer flexibility to those of us who don't like being substitute teachers in our own home. After reviewing the terms for the Frontline Health app, I will not be downloading it. Will the current health assessment continue to be available? Yes, we will make an alternative arrangement for people, although we are hoping to have as many people, if not everybody, on Frontline. Would encourage you please to just talk to us about the concerns you might have with that requirement. I will tell you, because this came up in another comment, it is HIPAA compliant and Ed Law 2D compliant, which for us means it can be used in a way that completely secures student information, student data, health information, but we have an obligation to do that, and that's what Frontline provides us, part of the reason why we chose this particular provider as well. Why are remote first grade teachers only teaching synchronously 4 out of 5 days instead of 5 out of 6? So the K2 level, they're actually seeing each other 5 out of 5 days. One of those days is less, it's more of a check-in than it is for the rest of instruction. And part of the reason we've done that at the elementary level, at that primary level, is because using the cycle days would mean their asynchronous day would change in terms of day a week every week. And we thought at the K2 level that would be particularly confusing. You're talking about the difference between 83% of the time face-to-face and 80% of the time. I actually think with the check-in on that other day, we're probably at about exactly the same percentage of time face-to-face. But also I will tell you that with this arrangement, as opposed to the cycle day arrangement, on days with 4 weeks, there will not be a day without face-to-face instruction. So in other words, instead of that being Wednesday, which has been scheduled for those remote sections, on whatever day that is. So on the Monday, as a matter of fact, for Yom Kippur, that would be a day without instruction, but all of the 4 other days, instead of the Wednesday, all 4 other days would be face-to-face. Somebody here does not like seesaws with 2 kids in school. I learned that you can only have 1 kid per device. Awesome. Can we hybrid seesaw free? It's just not a great app. It really isn't easy to keep track of assignments and what's been done and still needs to be done. We did assess that at the end of last year. Some people had feedback that they did not like it. We still believe that's the best product for us to use at that point, but certainly open to additional feedback. Why am I filling out health reports ×3 on both apps and email forms every day? Don't do that, please. They provide identical information. We agree. Only right now, don't be filling out Frontline yet. That is not operational. Just simply be filling out the link in the email that you're getting every day. This is really good. I'm going to finish with this one, and then I want to make sure I leave time for all the other ways we're collecting feedback. What determined our K-5 program to be hybrid versus full day Monday through Friday like our neighboring districts? I do not recall where this took place or was discussed. The interaction at this age is crucial to both their academic and social learning. I want to be really clear, really clear. We would like kids to be here, all kids, 5 days a week. The reality is when we convened our task force over the summer that had to take the state guidance, 145 pages of state guidance, and then figure out how to implement the guidance provided by the state in school for kids to come back. We could not provide in a safe way an environment where all kids could come because we couldn't provide the distance and we didn't have enough personnel to break kids into a small group and spread them out into other places in our buildings, even if we could find a way to do that, without also severely watering down whatever program we were offering. In other words, essentially having kids supervised for a period of time while they were waiting more instruction because they couldn't be around other kids. So from a safety perspective, it didn't make any sense. We didn't have the space to do it. We also did not have the people to do it. And then programmatically, it didn't make sense at that point either. And so that's how we made that decision. We had 2 large committees that formed one task force. One was on the operations side, one on the instructional side. And after trying to find a way to at least have K-5 kids here all the time, it proved to be impossible, like most districts. In fact, who are hybrid in the area. We know some are full-time K through 5. They had the space and the ability to do that. We did not, or we would have loved to have done that. I want to turn it over now to just some live question answer. Anybody who's on the Zoom that would like to jump in, I'm more than happy to answer any questions or engage in a discussion about anything that I've talked about or anything else that's on your mind that hasn't been mentioned so far. Then we'll go to the chat, and then we'll go to Facebook Live comments as well. Anybody like to jump in? Leslie, go ahead. You can unmute yourself. Not everybody's not muted, I don't believe. I think you can do that on your own.
Okay, thank you. So I put this in the chat too, but it's always good to ask out loud. We had a situation today where, so my kid one of my sons is at BHS and he eats his lunch, I guess, during flex time. So he didn't have that, during his virtual day today on Wednesday. So that meant no lunchtime. So he ran downstairs, quickly got a sandwich, brought it up, but was kind of not thrilled about eating it, in class. So is there so there's no kind of dedicated lunchtime, it sounds like, on the home days, which it seems like an issue. Is there anything we could do about that?
Yeah, Leslie, that's a great question. So I observed it firsthand and received 15-year-old feedback on that very directly, in fact. I think it's something we're going to need to think about. Many kids have a free period during the day. Not all, but many kids have a free period that usually accounts for that. But also, you're correct, a lot of kids count on flex to have that opportunity to eat. What we've done is encouraged teachers to be flexible in that, to make sure that, kids can eat during that Zoom, but that's not ideal either. So we're going to take a look at that and continue to explore that. I don't want to make any promises or tell you that we have a solution for that yet, but we do need to think about the possibility, even if it's an extra couple minutes, to be able to grab a bite to eat in between, because for some kids, they literally are going back to back to back. So we are sensitive to that. We worried a little bit about going too late in the day for kids too. It's an intense day and a long day, so there's pros and cons certainly, but I'm sensitive to that one, and I don't think you're wrong in that. I think that's something we need to take a look at.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Anybody else like to jump in? All right, Debbie and Lou are assistant superintendents. Debbie Baker, assistant superintendent for instruction. Lou Limo, assistant superintendent for administration, are also on. I know Deanna Spagnola, also our director of student support services, has joined us as well. And they're going to take a look at the chat and jump in, and so that it's a little more seamless than me scrolling through each of them. They've been monitoring that since the beginning. So Lou, what do you have for me?
I think Debbie's been responding. A lot of them are what you addressed is the synchronous learning not meeting expectations. And Debbie has been responding to, to voice your concern with the building principal and make sure that it's getting addressed.
Thanks. And I don't want to sound at all dismissive to any of that concern, because I get it. I get where you're coming from. It feels like we've been in school already a long time, but realize that it hasn't been. As a matter of fact, it's just the second day of in-person instruction for each of the alphabet groups on Monday and Tuesday, and this was the first Wednesday. So, certainly we have kinks to iron out. I know people are saying, well, you've known about this since last spring. Why couldn't it be happening faster? Everybody in this situation has had to reinvent every system and every approach to what we're doing. So I understand it. I'm not being dismissive of that. I know you'd like it to happen faster. People are working really hard on that, and we will continue to improve along the way. So appreciate that. And again, you're not wrong. It's just we need to keep working on it, and we'll get there. Anything else, Lou? Debbie, what do you think?
So something just came in, one thing. Yvonne, I don't know, Kevin, if you can see her because of the nature.
Oh, I see Yvonne. There you go. Hi, Yvonne.
I was going to say, she raised her hand a little earlier, so I want to make sure she was called on.
Go ahead, Yvonne.
Thank you, Debbie. I just have a clarifying question about an expectation. Maybe it was my misunderstanding. Are we supposed to get an email over the weekend, like Sunday night, like we did in the spring, with all of the work and expectations for the students? I thought I remembered hearing something about that.
What grade level, Yvonne?
High school.
Not typically. So no different than instruction that typically happens and the approach age level wise, middle school and high school, what happens. It wouldn't be typical in an in-person environment where you would be receiving that. I think more of that was happening in the springtime because this was completely new. Now, because the fact that your kids are in person with their teacher twice a week. A lot of that conversation is happening directly with the student like it would under normal circumstances at the high school level. If you have a particular difficulty or you're working on a particular issue around executive function and you want to be supportive in that way or work differently with the teacher, I would just encourage you to reach out to those teachers directly, and I'm sure that they'll work with you on something like that.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Kevin, this one just came in about considering plexiglass dividers in the lunch tables. Maybe actually that might even be a question for Lou, but.
Sure, Lou, you want to speak to that?
Certainly we can consider that. I mean, the principals, I think, have done a pretty good job of configuring their cafeteria areas to honor the 6-foot social distancing with the tables. But if there are any challenges to that, we're prepared to support them with barriers like we have at the high school to create some additional seating.
Thank you.
And then I just want to read this, Jeanette, your comment, because I think it really is telling and is appreciative. That thanks to the teachers who are working tirelessly for our kids, it's not easy and is double the work. It may seem like they aren't doing much, but we know that every second is being utilized. We're all in this together, and this is new to everyone.
Thanks, Jeanette. Appreciate that.
And then there's another positive from Alexis right after that she apparently wrote in the Facebook chat also. She says her 8th grader is feeling connected, well informed, and cared for by her teachers. This is hard stuff, and you're all climbing mountains to do this work, and she agrees with Jeanette.
Thanks, Alexis. Appreciate that.
That's it, Kevin.
Great. I do think, I know that sometimes in this format and when we go through the exchange comments, it feels, the tone and the feel can be all over the place. I guess it depends on where you're coming from. And some people might interpret our explanations to be defensive. They're not. They're simply explanations. We're very receptive to the feedback and we do follow up directly. Like I said, we take so many of these comments, screen clip them, send them out to the building. Hey, what's the story with this? Let's talk about this. We spent quite a bit of time this morning. Debbie and Lou and the other administrators were in a meeting with all the principals and we went through a list of about 25 of those questions just to make sure we clarify and talk about then our own communication internally and how clear we are on some of these. By the way, we've made changes along the way based on feedback people have given us. And the answer that somebody gave 2 weeks ago, or maybe even a week and a half ago, internally to a team of teachers may have changed, but they had already kind of set up their expectations and their communication around certain aspects of this. And so it's a matter of catching up with a very rapidly changing set of circumstances and rules and process and protocol. So, we're really open to the feedback, really appreciate the positive feedback. We're not fishing for those compliments either, but they are genuinely appreciated. I do think people are working awfully hard at it. That's not I'm sensitive to that because sometimes I say those things and people say, well, you should, that's your job. You guys should be doing this. Yeah, I get that. And you're absolutely right. And that's why I say that's our responsibility. We're getting it done. But there is a really complicated picture here in terms of safely bringing people here and delivering a meaningful program to them and reinventing every way that we do that, from the way we clean, to the way we transport, to the way we feed, to the way we teach, to the way we bring people in, the way we bring people out, the way we have meetings, the way we do all of the things that we do, the way we communicate. And we've got all these great tools at our disposal too that make it really easy to communicate really quickly and then communicate a ton. And so we're sorting each of those pieces out and working through each of them. People have really committed themselves to doing excellent work for your kids, as they always have. And so again, thanks for the patience around that. But that doesn't mean when I say that and we appreciate the compliments that we don't want the constructive feedback too. We absolutely do. Anything else from anybody who is in the Zoom right now before I look to the Facebook comments?
Kevin, maybe just mention the food service program and us taking advantage of the federal program. That's
please, Lou, explain that. That'd be great.
So there's additional federal program. The FDA is providing the community feeding program like we were doing in the spring. We are waiting on some additional guidance from that, and we'll be rolling that out and participating in that program. So essentially, it's a closed program that everyone in the Brighton community under the age of 18 would be eligible for a free meal. So look for information on that coming out in the next couple of days.
Great, thank you. Okay, so I'm going to jump to the Facebook comments at this point. Let's see here. I want to make sure I get them in the right order. So a comment here, a suggestion about starting the day all together, synchronous Pledge of Allegiance would be important, bring people together. That's a suggestion certainly we can share. Thank you for that, Therese. Stacy, thanks for all your hard work. Both kids came home first day saying it was better than they thought. It would be, knowing there would be many changes to what school looked like upon the reopening. This person has 2 happy kids. I will tell you this, I shared a story with some middle school kids yesterday when I was in their classroom. I asked the group, you know, who's glad to be back in person in school? And not the typical in previous years, maybe middle schooler response. Every single child in the classroom put their hand up. And then as we talked further, I was mentioning to them that one night last week, out for a walk with my wife, bumped into a bunch of different groups of kids separately. And I usually think we have really kind, polite, thoughtful, engaged kids here. And they always engage in conversations, just really, they're neat kids. But it was interesting, even the tone in the conversations with kids differently. They were just so happy. There was this joy with being back. And I was really excited for them. There was a whole different level of friendliness and warmth, just my observation in that moment. So I'm glad for kids. Julie's asking, will all or most questions on Thought Exchange be answered within the Thought Exchange? We explain how to access those answers, because I've only ever found top comments. Yeah, so Julie, if you didn't see that when I started, the report will go out in the District E-News Friday, which has all of the thoughts. When you go into the thoughts, there's a search bar at the top of all the thoughts. If you just put a question mark in that search bar, all the questions, the specific questions will come up. From there, every single question has been answered, other than maybe 2 thoughts that had question marks in them that were more rhetorical questions, not really looking for a response, just making a statement more or less. So yes, every single question was answered, and that would be the simplest way, is when you go in and look at all the thoughts, put a question mark in that search bar, and they will all come up that way. If you participate in the exchange, you should still be able to go in right now and look at thoughts. You can't offer thoughts, but I believe you can still go in and look at them. And again, every one of the questions was answered. Deborah's asking, on synchronous hybrid days, do kids need to log on by 7:50 a.m. to be counted present for the day? So, I'm sorry, on asynchronous hybrid day. No, they do not. They can log in their attendance anytime during that day up until midnight of that day. And the reason why we did that differently than I think some other places that have kids checking in by a certain time, and there was a question in the exchange about this, we wanted to provide flexibility, realizing some families have kids engaged in childcare during the day, have older kids watching younger kids. There are kids that are actually working on those days. And we, from many different perspectives, an equity perspective, et cetera, did not want to box people into one particular time, but allow for flexibility on that independent day to truly be independent. We do need to take attendance on that day. That's a state requirement, but it's anytime up until midnight that attendance can be logged. Leah says we're not okay watching our children's education regress rather than improve. We're not either, which is why we're working so hard to continue to improve it. Beth McDermott asking, what sports available for JV? Sure, I'd be happy to. Field hockey, soccer, men's and women's, girls tennis, girls swimming as well, and cross country. So I say those again. So field hockey, soccer, tennis, swimming, and cross country. Volleyball and football have been pushed by the state to the spring. Talia, you're very welcome. Thank you for that. Stacy, why not have flex on Wednesdays also to give a screen break and time to eat lunch? We were trying to condense that schedule to allow for time in the morning where teachers are actually meeting and collaborating, to allow for a later start time, but then at the same time not to have a day that goes until much later in the afternoon. And so that's why you see that condensed schedule without flex. Some of the feedback as we were exploring these ideas was that if you had flex, it would be perhaps a waste of time because they wouldn't be participating in flex like they would be during the school day in school. And so we've eliminated that at this point, but certainly something else we'll take a look at as well. That's all the comments on Facebook right now. Well, I see a couple more coming in. I'm sorry, so I'll go here to the bottom. Homecoming October. We are not having homecoming because we can't have any events. So I'm sure the high school announced pieces around that. I see Dr. Hall in here too. Dr. Hall, anything you want to speak to regarding homecoming?
Just that it's not happening. I we're not doing any activities, I don't believe, in the district that are not virtual right through December.
No,
Correct.
you're right. Thank you. What I was getting at is, I heard the kids talking about something in the springtime. Is that?
We are definitely looking at spring homecoming in that spring sports timeframe from May and June, when the weather is better. We are really hoping and to make something happen in May and June.
Thank you.
Yep.
Let's see here, just again, scrolling through, I'm sorry if these are out of order. Amy would like to see all schoolwork, whether it's in school or home days, be posted in Schoology. It should be, Amy, and we're working on that. Sarah, very positive comment. Thanks to everybody. Two very happy Frez and CRPS kids who love their teachers. Awesome. Glad to hear that. Trey's much improved from the spring. Thank you, Trey. It was outstanding from my 7th graders perspective. Every teacher engaged on Zoom. Again, I saw that too, and lots of people did. So if you're not, let us know so we can work on that and support that appropriately. But a lot of really, really good work done today and as we've started the year. Leah, how will grading be conducted this year? Grading will be conducted like it is in a traditional year. And the high school continues to, and middle school continue to talk about and look at that. Thinking flexibly about the way kids are attending and the way they're doing their work and the independence in that. But generally the grading scale and approaches are the same. Nikki's asking, have there been any talks about yearly school trips that the children usually take? For example, DC, we are actually planning the DC trip in the spring, but requiring full insurance for that also. So people choose to sign up and then that's not a possibility. They would be refunded on that. But we are really hopeful that that's something that will happen. Have no idea at this point, but that is something that at least we're taking the initial steps to plan now in case that is a possibility. I mentioned homecoming already. Alternative to take pictures at BHS other than going to the school. So for remote folks, that was today, right? Is there another day, Tom, or was that just today?
That for the high school, it was just today. We haven't come up with any other makeup dates. Maybe K-12, we would come up with some sort of makeup date for all K-12 kids who never got their pictures. French Road and Council Rock are setting up their own remote day, I think at French Road. I don't know the date on that, but I know Allison and Matt will send that out.
So that's a good example of one we'll pass along to the principals too, and they will follow up as well. Talia, if we need help getting into Excel or ClassLink or whatever, is there dedicated tech support? So we've done quite a bit to make tech support available. There is at specific times, there is tech help like there was last spring. We'll make sure we get that information out to you. Part of the, right now, the struggle is also getting all of the devices that are being used up to speed and deployed appropriately. So we're stretched thin there, but yes, there should be, and there will be opportunities in addition to help academically for kids when they're on their independent day or for all remote families as well. And we'll be getting that information out to people also. Natalie with a very positive comment about the work done here at Brighton and feeling really good about that. So thank you very much. We appreciate that also. The mask requirements for team sports, Adrienne has asked a really good question here. So masks are in the guidance from the state ed department and from NYSFA, the governing body for athletics. In a strange way of putting it, masks are supposed to be worn. However, if they cannot be tolerated by the athlete, they are allowed to not be worn. Our position on this would be that during competition, we would allow for masks not to be worn if it can't be tolerated by the athlete as per the guidance. However, on the sidelines, in transition, when not participating in the activity, that would not be acceptable. So everybody will be masked. Coaches will be masked at all times, and spectators will be masked at all times, despite being outdoors and socially distanced. And only two spectators will be allowed per participant in the activity, both for the home team and the away team. Just let's see here. Nikki, great comment on the Zoom session for Sunday. I'm glad that was good. Leah, for students who play fall sports but also play spring sports, will they interfere with one another, making students pick only one to play? Great question. No. What our understanding is right now is there is a plan for 3 essentially mini seasons in the spring. A January, February, a March, April, and a May, June. So the final details of that have not been put out yet, but right now it looks as though winter sports would be a January, February season. Typical traditional spring sports would be a March, April, and then May, June would be, I'm sorry, the fall sports would be March, April, and May, June would be spring sports. When I say fall sports, I would be meaning particularly volleyball and football because they're not being played now, and then that would be where we would play those fall modified sports. Those are all moving targets and changes. I would expect that will change and change back and change again between now and January, but we'll see where that lands. But we are hopeful that that is going to avoid the problem of people having to pick one to play. But we also don't have dual participation, so you couldn't do two at once. Strada is talking about school photos being very easy and fast by going to door 20. Well done. Glad to hear that. Thank you very much for that as well. Leslie Seltzer has posted here. Thank you very much. Next remote picture day is next Wednesday, September 23rd from 3 to 7 at Frez. So next remote day, September 23rd, 3 to 7 at Frez. Thanks, Leslie, for putting that in as well. And Jennifer says we have severe conditions at home and only one socially distancing around people. What alternative to pictures can be used? Jennifer, if you could reach out directly to your principal, let's talk about that in particular, because we want to make sure we're accommodating that as well and talk about what we can do for us to get the images that we need for school purpose and how we can help you with that also, or set up perhaps a private time to do that. There might be ways we can work around that. So if you could just give us a call, give the principal a call, and I think that they will certainly try and help you work through that. I'm going to say the last call for the Facebook comments. So if anybody else is watching on Facebook and would like to put any other comment or question in, and just ask Debbie and Lou, is there anything else in the chat that needs to be addressed?
Nothing that we haven't been able to do. I think just a few shout outs and good jobs, but other than that, I think we've got it all covered.
Great. Very happy to hear that, and thank you for all that. And I would just say, for the good of the order, anybody else who's on the screen and in the Zoom, if you have anything else that you'd like to add or ask or follow up on, I'm more than happy to jump into a conversation with you right now. And if I'm not seeing you, because there's a lot of people on the screen, feel free to unmute yourself and just jump right in. All right, folks, thank you very much for participating. We will make these a regular occurrence, and I know the principals are doing work like this also to engage with all of you. We appreciate the feedback, all of it, constructive, the positive, the not so positive. We get it. We want to keep improving, and that's off to all of you for making this work, and to our staff certainly for doing that also. We can't tell you how much we all appreciate it. We'll get there. We'll get there together. Stay safe, stay masked, stay healthy, stay distanced, and have a great night. Take care, everybody.